I joked about a winning streak a couple games ago, and I think now is officially the time that we can say we are on a winning streak. Purdue has won their fourth straight, a 78-57 dominant road win over the Iowa Hawkeyes. Little bit of I don't want to call it a revenge game because Purdue won the first matchup, but definitely some comments after the first game that I'm sure caught the eye of a certain Purdue point guard. Nonetheless, Purdue with a dominant 78-57 win. This is big for morale, big for the vibes in the program. Um, really responded after kind of blowing a 22-point lead late against Nebraska and sticking out a late overtime win and following that up with just a wire to wire dominant performance. What did you see from this Purdue team today, or I guess on Saturday? What impressed you the most?
Like you said, this was a response from Purdue. I mean, they really struggled against Oregon and then came out with an absolutely dominant first 30 minutes against a top 10 Nebraska team, but couldn't close it out. I mean, ultimately, they won in overtime, but they were a rink mass missed free throw away from losing that game in regulation. And to come back again, it's on the road against a top 25 team analytically. Like, say what you want about Iowa, but at least at home, they don't typically get beaten like this. And Purdue led by 26, I believe, at one point in the second half, and won by 21. Like, they just never let Iowa really get back into this game once they blew the lead open late in the first half. And this was a pretty dominant performance from most of Purdue's players, but I feel like you got to start talking about the shooting guard spot. Jakari Harris and CJ Cox were excellent in this game.
Yeah, Jakari Harris, KenPom MVP, the eighth Purdue player to do that on the season, and had the loudest moment for sure, I think, of this entire game with a pretty ridiculous poster dunk, and not that was not a cheap poster either. That was a legit on Cooper Cox's head. Like there was no guy kind of got out of the way at the last second. I don't think Cooper Cook realized he could. Jakari Harris could do that. I'm not sure Jakari Harris realized he could do that until he did it. But he monster slam, awesome video clip. But other than that, he was great. Like it wasn't just a dunk. He was 3 for 6 from three, 3 for 3 from the free throw line. He had 5 rebounds, 3 steals, just everything you needed from Jakari Harris in a game where CJ Cox was sidelined early with like a little bit of foul trouble. He was able to respond, and you know he didn't pick up a single foul the rest of the game after that, but did come out early. And Jakari Harris, while the game was in question, gave Purdue a huge spark, and I think was a big reason why Purdue was able to kind of push out that lead in the first half when they couldn't really get a ton going in the first 5 or so minutes.
Jakari had 9 of Purdue's, I believe, first 14 points or first 12 points. Like, he had 12 points very early and then only scored 2 points the rest of the way. But he kept Purdue in the game early when some of the guys were missing shots. They weren't getting good looks. We're turning the ball over a little bit. And Iowa's offense was pretty inefficient on the other end. It's not like they're really making Purdue pay for their sort of lackadaisical opening 4 minutes on offense. But when Jakari Harris checked into the game, he added a huge spark. You mentioned it. CJ Cox picks up 2 quick fouls, which on its face is, I mean, you don't want to lose any of your stars, but maybe outside of Braden, the worst player to get in foul trouble early against Iowa, just because he's the primary defensive matchup on Bennett Sturts, potential lottery pick, top 3 point guard in the Big Ten, and really the only significant threat Iowa has offensively. And Cox is the primary defensive matchup on that. He picks up 2 quick ones. One of them was just like a bad decision to reach in. The other was just in a bad spot in the wrong time. But he responded in a big way in the second half. We'll get to that in a minute. But Jakari Harris coming in, steadying the ship. You mentioned his stat line, 14 points on 4 for 7 from the floor. That monster dunk was the only 2-point attempt he took. The rest were all from three. 5 rebounds, 3 steals, and 0 turnovers critically. Just really smart player, took his opportunities, and made a big impact on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I mean he was great, and you talked about CJ a little bit. The primary matchup on Bennett Sturts, the CJ Cox satchel might be back a little bit. He was incredible defensively. I thought Bennett Sturts really struggled to get anything going, even scoring the basketball really at all. until kind of the second half when the game was out of hand and he started to hit a few tough shots over some guys. And I remember one over Fletcher that was a pretty tough mid range fadeaway late in the shot clock when the game was out of hand already. But the big thing for me is that Sturts was fine scoring the basketball. One assist though on the game for Bennett Sturts. Like CJ made him uncomfortable and made him so one dimensional as a guy that does everything for Iowa. I mean, we see some of the guards around the conference, and you can point to like a guy like Jeremy Fears and talk about the offensive load he has for Michigan State, but I would argue there's not one player in Power Five basketball that has a bigger load offensively and a bigger responsibility offensively than Bennett Sturts. And to hold that guy to 19 points and one assist on not otherworldly shooting. I mean, he was efficient from 2 point range, but 2 for 6 from three. Really wasn't comfortable the entire game. It's a real credit to CJ and Jakari as well. He was great defensively too, but the two guard spot was just so high level on both ends of the floor that it made Purdue really, really, really tough to beat.
Yeah, you gave CJ credit for the defense on Sturts. I really want to shout out Braden Smith and Jakari Harris, though, because CJ didn't play much in that first half. And Sturts really got to go in scoring in the second half, but was almost completely shut out in the first half. And I thought it was a great effort, sort of collectively, by Purdue's guards. They were executing some switches sometimes. Some different guys were responsible for defending Sturts, and they really shut them down. And to your point about Purdue's defense, we talked about this in the preview a little bit. They got a lot of justifiably got a lot of deserved pushback for the defensive game plan against Iowa in the first matchup. They were leaving role players wide open on the wings and in the corners for some looks. I know Purdue fans were particularly frustrated with Kyle Combs and Banks hitting some tough threes to keep Iowa in the game, especially in the first half. Home on the role players in this game. They, instead of saying like we need to do everything we can to take Bennett Sturts out of the game like they did in the first game, they said, you know what, Bennett Sturts, get for yourself because we're not going to let you pick apart our defense with your passing. And that game plan is incredibly effective when you have guys like CJ, like Jakari, and even Braden, who are sticking to Sturts like glue and making shots really difficult for him. I mean, he finished 7 for 12 from the floor, 19 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, a block, and no turnovers. Undeniably a good Bennett Sturts game. Here and talking about like, yeah, Purdue's defense did a great job on Bennett Sturts, and he had 19 points on 12 shots. Didn't turn the ball over. Like that's just how good he is as a basketball player. But the one assist really stands out. They didn't let other guys get involved in this game, and Sturts was the only Iowa player in double figures.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Like you mentioned the team defense aspect of it, and I think we talked a lot about the difference between an open shot and a contested shot, and I think Purdue did a lot better job of what a certain section of the fan base thought they were doing the first time, and that's contesting role player threes, and I think you saw the outcome of that. Like I think you saw an Iowa team that shot 27% from three because guess what? You had guys like Cooper Cook going 1 for 3 on contested tougher shots. Kyle Combs didn't hit a three in this game, went 0 for 1, largely because he wasn't even open to attempt one in the first place. Like Brandon Housen went 1 for 5, and he's a shooter. He comes from a little bit of a shooting pedigree, but a lot of his 5 threes were really tough threes. And so I think Purdue's defense did a really good job of paying Sturts a lot of attention and making sure he didn't go off or anything, but they recovered well. They rotated well. They closed passing lanes well. They made life tough on the Iowa role players, even when they were giving Sturts the majority of the attention. And it was just a level of execution that was missing from that kind of stretch of games that included that Iowa game.
Yeah, this is definitely a really good defensive performance from Purdue. And you mentioned Brendan Housen, a guy who didn't play in the first matchup against Purdue. He was one of the bigger portal gets for Ben McCollum this past cycle, but is largely not in the rotation for Iowa. He's probably their second or third best shooter on the team. But I guess his defense is so bad they just can't afford to have him out there. But he played 10 minutes in this game, got up 6 shots, only made one of them, and they were desperately looking for any kind of offense and guys who could make shots when they were at least semi open, and he really couldn't fix that. I thought two guys off the bench for Iowa made an impact in this game. Alvaro Forgueras and Trevin Urak only played a combined 36 minutes, so it's not like they were out there a ton, but they had a combined 11 points. I mean, we're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here in terms of trying to compliment Iowa when you're talking about guys who combined for 11 points, but they just brought some energy and they made a few plays. None of them were super efficient from the floor, but Iowa was really looking for anything. And the hero of the last game in Mackey Arena, Kyle Combs, could not have been worse in this game, and they had to turn elsewhere, including to an underperforming transfer in Fulgaris and at least an intriguing freshman for the Urak.
Yeah, no comment on the Iowa bench. I think I'm going to go with that. Let's get back to some more productive basketball players. Kind of the next guy on the list. You mentioned Braden Smith. He was good in this game, I think. I wouldn't say great. I don't think he had his best stuff. He was 1 for 5 from the floor, only had 5 points, but 7 rebounds, 12 assists, 1 turnover, 1 steal. He was phenomenal in all other aspects other than scoring the basketball. The aspect that he dominated the most in the first matchup. What did you see from Braden? Are you concerned about the shooting? I know I'm personally not, but he's had a little bit of a rougher stretch shooting from the floor recently, despite Purdue's success. Should we expect more of this from Purdue? Do you think it's better for Purdue too that he's scoring less?
I don't know how much to take away from this game. There was a report that he missed a practice earlier in the week because he was sick. That didn't seem to affect his energy and effort and intensity on the court. But if he wasn't feeling great, maybe his legs are a little off, his shots a little off, and he missed a couple shots early, and other guys were making them. So he was content to pick up his 12 assists, chip in 7 rebounds, had a steal as well. I mean, he was really flying around, very close to picking up another couple of steals that he just missed. Yeah, just good Braden game, like you said. Like the great Braden games are better shooting nights, and he puts more points on the board. But 5, 7, and 12 with the steal, and here like, he could have been better. Tells you kind of all you need to know about just how special of a player Braden Smith is, especially if he was dealing with some sort of flu bug. Now, hopefully, he has the weekend or the rest of the weekend to get over it, because Purdue's definitely going to need Braden Smith at his best if they want to upset Michigan on Tuesday. Stay tuned for a preview on that coming out a little bit later. But yeah, I'm not concerned long term about Braden at all.
Yeah, I think the shooting will leave it out. He was pretty hot to start Big Ten play. It was hard to see that carrying over at quite that level throughout the rest of the season. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned he was excellent everywhere else. Alongside him, another guy who I thought had a really complete game himself, Mr. Trey Kaufman-Renn, the kind of all-American running mate of Braden Smith that came back with him this year. Nice little 12 and 12 for Trey. He had a quietly productive game is how I would describe him. He was thought he was flying around a bit on the glass, but not a super loud scoring game. Didn't have an assist, but also didn't. He only registered 1 turnover. I thought he was good defensively, even though he didn't record a steal or a block. I noticed some good things he was doing. I thought he was a positive, presence out there defensively. The body language as well is something that I feel like has been a talking point in the past with Trey, and now that it's a lot better, I don't think has been mentioned at all, and I think it deserves mentioning how much of a positive impact he's been over the last 4 games. I mean, especially in this 2-game road trip to Nebraska and Iowa. 19 rebounds against Nebraska, followed up with 12 against Iowa. He's dominating the defensive glass. He's flying around too. Like, it's noticeable. He's everywhere on the glass. He's physical. He's a dominant force right now on the glass, and the productivity he's bringing with it, you can't really argue.
If he had managed to get to double figures against Nebraska, he might have won Big Ten Player of the Week this week. I mean, 31 rebounds, averaging 15 and a half rebounds between Nebraska. That's just absurd. but that's Edie level rebounding, which sounds crazy to say. And uh, I don't know how many, road trips Edie had where he got 31 rebounds in 2 games. I mean, that's just absurd production. 12 points in this game. Took another ill-advised three-pointer. But when you're rebounding the way he is, I'll give you a one corner three a game. He'll probably make one every 3 or 4 games if he takes one a game. That's fine. You go ahead and shoot, Trey. You got 12 rebounds. You deserve it. This is a guy who, I mean, reportedly is watching Dennis Rodman highlights before games. Now, I don't know if
Above
there's a
it.
more Dennis Rodman thing to do than to grab 12 boards and take the worst 3-point shot of the night from the corner just because he can. I mean, that's who Trey has had to become this year. And I know it gets memed around a little bit, and he probably doesn't need to be quite as one dimensional as like a Dennis Rodman or even like a Draymond Green. Like, he's a better scorer at the college level than those guys were in the NBA. And, there's more he can offer to the offense than just like the garbage man stuff that like are associated with those kinds of players. But 5 for 8 from the floor, 5 for 7 on shots he should have taken. Like, that's all you can ask for from Trey. 12 and 12. Fourth Purdue player we talked about, by the way. Like, we're sitting here like, oh yeah, Trey Coppin 12 and 12, double double, 31 rebounds over the last 2 games, and we started by talking about Jakari Harris and C.J. Cox and Braden Smith. When Trey is putting out those stat lines, he's exactly what this Purdue team needs.
Yeah, I mean, credit to him for unselfishly turning into exactly what this Purdue team needs out of him. And I think he is largely putting the responsibility on himself to fit next to Oscar Clough in a way that works for this Purdue team. And I think you're seeing some good results come out of it. Also, speaking of Dennis Rodman, would it shock you if Trey Kaufman-Renn missed the Northwestern game to fly to Vegas or something and, was back in time for Ohio State or whoever we have after that? No, I don't know if it would shock me if he took a 2 or 3 day leave of absence from the team. But in all seriousness, Trey has been phenomenal over this last stretch of games. And, hopefully he keeps it up because I love watching this version of Trey Kaufman-Renn. This is a very fun player to watch, and a player that I know Purdue fans can really get behind in a way that, maybe they hadn't recently for whatever reason. Moving on to the third member of the big three, Fletcher Loyer, kind of the most average Fletcher Loyer game you could have. He had 12 points. He played 27 minutes. He was 1 for 2 from 2-point range and 2 for 5 from 3. Not the flashiest game, but not awful efficiency either. Did not record a rebound, but had 3 assists and no turnovers. Thought this was another good but not great moment, similar to Braden. This was good Fletch, but not great Fletch.
Yeah, I mean, this was just solid. If you could get this night every night from Fletcher Loyer, I think Purdue would take it. 12 points on 7 shots, 3 assists, no turnovers. He's out there to shoot, and sometimes gives a little bit extra off the dribble and gets to the line, and that's about all you can ask for from Fletch. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say on Fletch. I don't think it was just like, this is exactly what Purdue needs from him. And for Purdue's 3 main shooting guards, though I guess Fletch typically plays the small forward position technically in Purdue's lineup, for them to combine for 40 points on what's this? That's 9 for 20 from 3, 40 point. Like, that's, I don't know how many teams are beating Purdue when their shooters are playing like that. Jakari Harris 3 for 6 from 3. CJ Cox 4 for 9 on some pretty tough step back types in the second half when he was trying to keep his hot streak going. Fletch doing his 2 for 5 thing. I don't know, maybe Arizona or Michigan clicking at their best could top that effort, but I don't know anyone else that could.
Yeah, and honestly, from my point of view, I mean, we'll get more into Michigan in the preview that we're getting ready to do here in a little bit, but Michigan might be the only team. They're a step above Arizona right now, and I think if you got 40 points with that level of defense from those 3 guys, this Purdue team is just so tough to beat because you're going to get high level games for Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn more often than not, and the center spot has been you know, at worst functional over this stretch, and I think that that's important. Like you've seen some good things from the center spot. That's been, in my opinion, the only spot that hasn't even really been at like an elite level over this stretch. So really exciting things for this Purdue team. But all in all, I think this Iowa game was largely just mostly a lot of like guys did what they do well, but it wasn't a perfect game. It wasn't like Purdue went nuclear from three or anything and just blitzed them. I just think this game says a little bit about where these two teams are at currently, especially talent wise. I think this Iowa team is just a little bit limited. And, maybe you look at that Purdue game in Mackey and say, well, I think that game had more to do with Purdue not playing well than it did Iowa doing a ton or having a high ceiling. And I think you're starting to see some limitations come through on this Iowa team, but I really don't have anything else on this game. This is a good but not great performance that was good enough for a 20-point win. And that's good enough for me in a quad one road setting.
Yeah, real quick before we get out of here, I'd like to own up to something. I need to be better. I really try to come on here on this recap and talk up Alvaro Figueres and Trevin Urak. I do this thing. I try credit to the
I'm so
opposing team.
disappointed in you. I can't believe
True,
we got Alvaro Figueres credit on this
true.
podcast.
He had 2 turnovers. The only Hawkeye with more than 1 turnover. I don't know what I was thinking. I try and give credit to the opponent on these recaps. That's what I do. I tend to be a pretty positive guy. And that's what I had to do to find some credit to give Iowa outside of a pretty good Bennett Sturts game was like, Trevin Urak 1 for 4 from the field, but he had 6 points. Like, come on. Nope.
Yeah.
Purdue did the scout correctly this time. Like I mentioned earlier, they were like, Sturts is good. The rest of this team, not so much. Let's just make Sturts have to score 40 if they want a chance at winning. He just scored like 36 against Maryland and they lost that game. So they were like, you know what? He's going to have to like shoot 9 for 11. He's going to have to pull a Keaton Wagler to keep Iowa in this game based on how we're going to defend him. And he didn't really have it for like 30 minutes in the game. If he'd been shooting the way he did like towards the end of the game the whole time, maybe it's a different story. But no, Purdue's defense is a lot better in this one. But that'll wrap it up for the Iowa recap. I don't think we can squeeze any more out of this game. We, like you said, it was a kind of a pretty just solid performance all around from a bunch of different guys. 21-point road win against the top 25 KenPom team, and you're kind of coming away from it like, yeah, Purdue is just pretty solid, which I think says maybe a little bit about who Iowa is, but also how good this Purdue team is and how they're clicking right now. So big one against Michigan in Mackey Arena on Tuesday night. We'll have the preview for that game up shortly. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for that.